Okay, so that's a different risk, but it's a good question to take a look at kind of the global risks that we face and try to measure them up. So Iran is, in my opinion, potentially a bigger risk than Europe, but with a lower probability. Does that make sense? That if things got really bad in the Middle East, that would be just incredibly disruptive for the world economy. But even if Greece kicks out of the Eurozone and Portugal goes down too, I think it's all manageable. Yeah, countries like Italy, they can bail themselves out. You just need a once and for all wealth tax. And you could even sell the wealth tax as paying the taxes that you should have paid in the past. And they're on side immediately if they had the political will to do that. It's a very productive country, especially in the north. So it's not the same. It's not the same anywhere near the same as a country like Greece, where you don't have the productivity. So looking at these two risks, so Iran, if they're basically what we're talking about is what would happen if there was a bombing of the nuclear complexes, and basically the usual talk is that Israel would be the one to pull this off. I guess my view is that there's a probability that that could happen, but it's not a really big probability. And the main risk is kind of a political risk, where the Prime Minister of Israel might find it expedient to do something, but looking at the actual complexity of the problem and what it would actually buy you, it seems to me that the costs greatly outweigh the benefits. And let me explain why. The first thing is, how much time does it buy you in terms of setting back the nuclear program? And it's really debatable how much, because really to take out all of the facilities, about a dozen facilities, and this country has been tunneling for years, and it's not so easy to do this. Indeed, it was fascinating that the US is working on a bomb that is bigger than the so-called bunker buster, because they know the bunker buster is not going to do the job. So the US doesn't even have the capability with a conventional weapon to take out some of these key installations. So if the US can't pull it off, then it's extremely unlikely that a country like Israel could pull it off with conventional weapons. Obviously, you could pull it off with nuclear weapons, but that causes another problem. So practically speaking, it's just not feasible to decisively set that program back, given the path that it's on, with Israel doing it. And right now, even with the US doing it, it's questionable. So this is a huge risk. I was in a meeting in London last week where this was basically one of the key topics. And we're trying to think about, well, this is a classic tail risk, right? So it's kind of low probability, but if it happens, it's really bad. So what are the scenarios? What is going to happen? Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Well, the winner is going to be like long oil, because oil price probably go to 200 very quickly. And if you look at, and there could be some countries that are winners also, given that they're more immune or they're oil producers, like Norway. So the value goes up dramatically. But there is a global recession. There is potentially retaliation from multiple countries onto Israel, and then the U.S. is kind of stuck in the middle, what to do. So it's a disastrous scenario. But in terms of the tail risk, what do? Well, you buy deep out-of-the-money call options, like really deep, $180 call options, and get them now while they're cheap. And those options, as you know, if you can get them for a couple of dollars, what would happen if the oil price, doubled? So that would be kind of the classic protection. But right now, the thing is that it doesn't. The probability of success is so low. It's really hard to define success because probably in the most optimistic scenario, it would be partial success, and that would mean that it sets you back in time. Right now, the strategy appears to be to assassinate the nuclear scientists, and that could be actually over the long term a pretty effective strategy. The strategy of Stuxnet didn't think about the repercussions of that. Maybe it set things back by a few months, and it was a good idea, I guess, a worm like that. But what people didn't anticipate was the retaliation. So the cyber retaliation with denial of service attacks that shut down a number, like utilities, airlines in Israel. So two can play that game. So, and again, was the cost worth the benefit? It's just not clear right now. So the way I see it, it is a bigger risk in terms of the size of the risk if it occurs compared to Europe, because it means war, essentially, whereas Europe is a financial mess. That's different than a military and sort of conflict. So Iran is a bigger risk, but the probability is much lower. Like we kind of know in Europe something's going to happen. It's a low probability that they can continue to kick the can down the road. Like at some point, they have to deal with the problem. They are basically delaying and delaying and delaying and hoping that it will go away in Europe. Okay, so the idea is that the banks can make enough money to shore up their capital to withstand some defaults. That's kind of the basic strategy. The same strategy was pursued in Japan, though it cost them 20 years of recession. Whereas the delay strategy in Iran is different, right? Because the more you delay, you increase the probability that something really bad is going to happen. So I would have handled the situations differently ex post, I guess. But ex ante right now, we're at the point where there's pretty limited chance of a successful kind of military engagement. So that sort of risk, that short-term risk is low. Unfortunately, the long-term risk, which means what happens in 4 years when Iran has got not just a nuclear weapon, but the capability to deliver it, that is increasing.